Hello and welcome to week 2 of social problems. This week we're going to be looking at social stratification, the ways that we divide into groups. When I first started teaching sociology, I didn't quite recognize the importance of group identification. Not only is it associated with our culture, like we studied last week, a common way of life, but it's also associated with where in society we're located. So when we start to look at social stratification, we start to look at the ways that we divide into groups, and your status within these groups is associated with where you are located in the hierarchically stratified social class ladder. For example, minority status, identifying with a group that has minority status, is associated with less opportunity, less life chances, less opportunity to rise up the social class ladder. So, again, when you think about how you rise up the social class ladder, it's a math equation. Generally, education plus job prestige plus wealth equals power. But then the other variables we need to be considering are the equation is more than just that. It's also based upon sex and race, religious identification, sexual orientation identification, because all of these factors are associated with minority status. And often these minorities historically have been subjugated into the lower classes. For example, anyone that identified as non white or that was female was not given the opportunity to rise up the social class ladder until we had several civil rights movements. And even in modern times, what you find is there's inequality that exists. And you can just simply look at pay rates. Women make 80 cents to a dollar to a man, but a black woman makes only 67 cents to a dollar, whereas a white woman makes 80 cents to a man's dollar. So that's the intersection between race and sex and social class. The idea is where you're located within these groups dictates whether or not you've historically had access to rise up the social class ladder. So in the United States, only those that were male that had European descent had the chance to rise up the social class ladder until, again, several movements of the civil rights. So, what we're going to be talking about this week again is social class, and that's where you find labor. It's upper class versus lower class, the workforce versus the owners, the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat. You're going to look at the effects of the economy. How does your socioeconomic status, how much money your parents had, the neighborhood you grew up in, how is that associated with whether or not you rise up the social class ladder? And then the overarching is poverty, being stuck in the lower classes. How does being stuck in the lower classes affect your overall life chances? Does it reduce your ability to rise up the social class ladder? So again, what's the best way to get out of poverty but education, which gets you a job, which gets you wealth? But those who have access to education, access to a good job, that's often where you're going to find forms of privilege. For example, historically, someone that was non-white did not have access to a managerial job. Someone that was a female did not have access to becoming a doctor or a lawyer, which then increased poverty rates for these minority groups. And since these minority groups were often subjugated into the lower classes, and then you found this association between culture and poverty. Is there a culture of poverty? Which groups are more likely to be stuck in a culture of poverty? And then again, when you start to look at females, for example, women have higher rates of being stuck in a culture of poverty for various reasons. Same thing with other minorities and other statuses. So again, it all goes back to the math equation. Education plus job plus wealth equals power. But again, your access to your education, access to a job is influenced by the groups that you identify with. And do you have a dominant position in those groups, or do you have a subjugated position in those groups? So again, everything's all about life chances, the ability to rise up the social class ladder. But from a conflict theory perspective, again, what enables you to rise up the social class ladder is often your status within these groups. Okay. So for this week, you guys are going to read through all the material. So look through your lesson overview, understanding social problems. Again, it tells you what you need to do. You need to be looking at chapter 2. You're going to be looking at chapter 12. Watch these videos and also focus on the one on stratification. Then we're going to do exercise 1 and we're going to do response 3. So for your exercise 1, this is going to be your first chance to really do some fun creative writing. Actually, both of these exercises and the response this week are excellent for creative writing. But as for your application exercise, you guys are going to Choose a problem, and then again, use the criteria that's based in the chapter one of your book. Then you're going to take a theoretical perspective to that problem, either from functionalism, conflict theory, or symbolic interactionism. And I like to focus on the big problems because, just for this lecture, but you guys feel free to talk about anything you want. But for example, if we wanted to apply the sociological theories of race, I'll do it from all the different theories, and then you guys just can pick one and then kind of run with it. So when you do this assignment, it's best to give a quick overview of the theory and then apply it. So, for example, race and functionalism. What's the association? How would a functionalist account for race? From a functionalist perspective, there are social roles that are unequally divided. Europeans wanted to dominate the top tiers, so they constructed race so they had a very clear cut lower class workforce. And so the way society was constructed racially was that non-whites were stuck on the bottom and only light-skinned Europeans that we then categorized into white get to have an opportunity to, be on top. And this is the way that society was divided. And this served a purpose, but what purpose did it serve? Who did it serve? What was the purpose of subjugating people into different races? And this is where we can look at conflict theory, for example. The purpose of race, the purpose of socially constructing race, yes, was to divide society into rich and poor and have a clear cut lower class workforce, which is a functionalist perspective. Conflict theory is going to focus on those in power and say, yes, but this served the group in power. And so, who did race serve? It served Europeans. Because by constructing races, they were able to remove competition from the market because anyone that wasn't a male and that wasn't of European descent wasn't able to compete in the economic market. They weren't allowed to rise up the social class ladder and take elite social positions, for example. A symbolic interactionist perspective race would say something like, we're the ones who create society. We're the ones who socially constructed racial categories. We're the ones who dictate the criteria for race. So if you don't like race and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in modern times because there's no biological basis for race, maybe we should consider deconstructing it. If not, then we should at least change the meanings attached to race so that we can create a more equitable world, reduce stereotypes and stigmatization for other people, and enable meritocracy to rule instead of a group in power to rule. So again, take something fun. Look at sex, gender, sexual orientation. You guys can look at the education system. From a functionalist perspective, what's the purpose of the education system? Well, again, all institutions contribute to the whole. So the education system contributes to the whole. How does the education system contribute to the whole? Well, it socializes people and teaches them to fulfill social roles. But from a conflict theory perspective, again, only 35% graduate college. So, is the education system fulfilling its purpose? Well, if the purpose is to filter people out into upper class and lower class, then the education system's doing just fine. But a conflict theory perspective is going to point out the inequality in the education system and say that it's socializing some people to succeed and some people to not succeed. And symbolic interactionism, again, is the idea that we're the ones who created the education system. We're the ones who decide what should be taught and what shouldn't be taught. If you don't like it, if the education system's not working for everyone, come up with a new one or come up with several different ones or whatever's best. Again, we're the ones who make it. And if it's working just fine, maybe we should just leave it alone. So that's how you guys do your application exercise. Take a social problem, poverty, race, social class, whatever it is you guys are interested in. Look through the chapters of the book, open up your old intro book, look through the chapters in that. Whatever helps you guys to do your research, but this is a chance for you to select a social problem you enjoy and then apply the sociological theories. And again, this is much easier if you just do a quick evaluation of the theory and then apply it. So you also this week have to do your response, which is a great chance to do some creative writing. I really like this response for creative writing. So the idea is, what do you think is the greatest social problem facing your country or the world today? And I am completely fine with combining these assignments. If you want to talk about race in the first one and then go even further with this and talk about race some more, do that because that helps you specialize. All I did was write about race for my first couple years of study. Then I got into social class and now I'm into sex and gender. So whatever it is that you guys are into, write about that. Focus on that. Maybe it's something you can talk about all through school. So if you guys have any questions, please email me and thank you so much. Have a wonderful week.